Welcome to Literary AF Podcast.
Hello, you're listening to Literary AF Podcast. I'm Danny.
And I'm Arlene.
Today we're going to be talking about some books.
Childhood memories.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about our favorite books from childhood, and I have a feeling that I might be talking a little bit more in this episode because Danny has done a lot of talking about books that you've read in your youth.
Yeah. Because usually, Tamora Pierce books have come up a lot.
Yes.
They're very important to me, so I've talked about them a lot.
Absolutely.
But that's where my childhood reading begins and ends. So, I didn't start reading books, regularly until I was in 8th grade. Yeah. When I found those Tamora Pierce books. Aside from that, I read, Harry Potter.
Yeah, which,
we don't need to talk about Harry Potter. I think a lot of people have talked enough about Harry Potter that we don't have to.
Yeah, I think everything that can be said about Harry Potter
has been said, and then some extra that we didn't need.
Stuff nobody wanted to know about Harry Potter.
So, I don't have a whole lot to talk about today.
Well, that's good, because I have a whole bunch that I could talk about.
All right.
I spent a lot of my formative years reading. When I was in elementary school, that's basically all I did. Is I would run away to the library at recess and lunch and hide there when the librarian was on her break and just read. It resulted in me reading basically every book in the library before I left that elementary school. So, yeah, I definitely read more than my fair share. I read The Lord of the Rings when I was 8 or 7 or something, which, let me tell you, those books are very different when you're reading them as an adult versus reading them as a 7-year-old. I wish I wish now that I could have a concept of how much I actually understood back then, because it was not a lot. But that's also kind of where I started reading adult fantasy novels, because they had some Anne McCaffrey for some reason. But I also did read a lot of kids' books as well. So I think when I'm talking about books from my childhood that I really loved, probably the first one is Year of Impossible Goodbyes by, and I hope I say this correctly, Sook Choi. She is a Korean American, I believe, and she wrote from her experiences growing up in Japanese occupied Korea. And the book itself is extremely sobering. It is a book very much about wartime and about the oppression of Sookan and her family, and kind of what they kind of went through, what their daily life was like her family members, her brothers and father had gone off to fight the war, and her mother and her aunt and her grandfather are kind of her main family. Her mother and aunt work at a sock factory, and her grandfather, who is not capable of fighting and living on his own, whatever. The family takes care of him, and he watches the kids. So, really, I think as a kid, I wasn't even really considering, the historical aspect of it. Now, as an adult, I really find it interesting that this is a piece of history that I had never... I didn't learn about this at any point in my school life. If I hadn't read this book, I probably could have reached adulthood without knowing that A, Japan occupied Korea, and B, when the Japanese were kicked out, it was Russia that came in, and that kind of started the whole movement into, North and South Korea, and all what that entails. Okay, so for a more concise description of the book, or summary, I should say it is 1945, and courageous 10-year-old Sookan and her family must endure the cruelties of the Japanese military occupying Korea. Police Captain Narita does his best to destroy everything of value to the family, but he cannot break their spirit. Sookan's father is with the resistance movement in Manchuria, and her older brothers have been sent away to labor camps. Her mother is forced to supervise a sock factory, and Sookan herself must wear a uniform and attend a Japanese school. Then the war ends. Out comes the Korean silks and the bags of white rice, but communist Russian troops have taken control of North Korea, and once again the family is suppressed. Sookan and her family know their only hope for freedom lies in a dangerous escape to American-controlled South Korea. So that's really... it sounds very intense for a children's book, and it really was. Like, there are a lot of really hard parts to this book and not a whole lot of good bits. Like, the little bits of hope and happiness are, short-lived and also very small. But I think when I was growing up, I found it significant just because these were all experiences that to me were very, unfamiliar. Like, I could not fathom going through them. It sounded truly horrible to me. And in a way, I think that was important for me as a child, also a child growing up in North America, to just be aware of other parts in the world and what they've had to go through. And I remember in particular the part where Sookan's mother, she decides to take them to South Korea to try and reunite with their father, where they get separated. And I remember that reading this, that sounded like the most horrible experience, and I really, to me, that was the scariest part of the book. It wasn't like the the descriptions of torture or the bad things that happened to Sookan and her family. It was definitely just like being alone and running for your life and being separated from your parent. I don't know, it kind of struck me. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of heavy for a kid's book.
Yeah, sounds it.
But I borrowed it every single time I possibly could. I probably had it for a good 3 months of the entire year just because I kept reading it and reading it and reading it. And it was the first book from my childhood that I actively looked to buy, and I bought it new online the second I could. So, yeah, probably my favorite book from my childhood. Yeah. That isn't to say I didn't also read stuff that was a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
I really loved Bruce Coville too. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Bruce Coville writes fantasy and I would say like modern setting, but with a fantastic or magical twist to them. Like he wrote My Teacher is an Alien, which I think is probably a book that when I mentioned Bruce Coville, anyone who's ever read him, I know anyway, has read that book. So, but he also wrote a whole bunch of other sci-fi and fantasy stories. And I particularly was drawn to this one series called, it starts out with Into the Land of the Unicorns. And I should come out and say that I was not like the horse girl when I was in elementary, but I probably could have come close to being the unicorn girl. I loved unicorns.
Okay.
And yeah. I had so many.
That makes you a horse girl, like, by proxy.
No!
Proxy horse girl.
Well, I mean, I didn't talk to people about unicorns. I just had 12 unicorn statues and 4 unicorn stuffed animals and a unicorn-shaped lamp and a unicorn pillowcase.
Yeah, no, you were a horse girl. You were a horse girl. Your horse just had a horn on its head.
Magic horses doesn't count.
Magic horses do count. You were a horse girl.
Oh, okay. I'll accept my fate. But, so, naturally, being a unicorn girl, anything with unicorns was a-okay for me. And this was around the same time that I had read The Neverending Story for the first time. So any books that were a kid gets sucked into this other world, I was super into. And that is exactly what happens in this book, where there's a girl named, Kara, that's it, thank you, who lives with her grandmother, and who gets teased at school because she insists that unicorns are real, because her grandma has told her for years that unicorns are real. And one day they're walking home from, I forget where, someplace, and a man starts following them, and Kara's grandma gets really scared, hands her an amulet, and tells her to run. And she sends her into this church and tells her to run up to the top. And I don't know why she ends up jumping, but she ends up jumping off the roof of the church with this amulet. And the amulet does some magic stuff, and she lands in this land called Luster, which is the land of the unicorns. And she carries with her, as well as the amulet, a message from her grandmother to the Unicorn Queen. The Watcher is weary, and she is supposed to deliver that message, although she is all alone in a forest, and there are people after her, and also after the unicorns, one of whom she encounters very quickly. His name is Lightfoot, and he's a bit of a spunky unicorn.
Yes.
She accumulates several beast-man hybrid type friends along the way. There's like a bear man called Dimblethumb. I remember him.
Wow.
He is like a half bear, half man type thing.
Right.
And
like man half on top, like a centaur, but
bear half on the bottom.
Yeah.
No, that would be amazing. That would have been way cooler. No, he's kind of like a half, like a werebear started transforming and got halfway.
Gross.
I imagine him a little cuter than that. Maybe just large and furry. I don't know. It's awkward. And there's also a thing called a squidgum.
Okay.
Which is a squirrel monkey.
Okay.
Which is as awful as I can imagine any creature could possibly be. But it has a very, dark fantasy Narnia type vibe to it, though.
Okay.
Bruce Coville is exceptionally good at sucking you into the worlds he creates. Especially when I was a kid, I drew so many pictures. I drew fan art of this book, essentially.
Uh-huh.
And everything in it was really beautiful. And the concept of basically being sucked into a world where there were unicorns was the best thing I could imagine when I was a kid. So yeah, that one I found out much later was a 4-book series.
Oh.
Of which I could never find the other 3 books.
Oh.
I haven't read them yet. I plan on buying them very soon because I want them.
Yeah.
I want to read these. I want to relive my unicorn girl days.
Oh, your horse girl days.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I see you have a couple of books there.
I remembered one as you were talking.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I already like that cover.
Oh, yeah.
She actually pulled it off her shelf now, so she's actually holding a book with a big vampire. Or not vampire.
It's a wow.
It's a wow.
Wow.
I'm just like those people who made the covers for all of the Marvel stuff.
There is a wolf on the cover of this book.
A wolf and not a vampire.
You should just leave right now.
I know. My brain said wolf, but my mouth said vampire.
Your mouth said vampire. That was a jump.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yep. Oof. Anyway.
So, I never actually finished this series, but I remembered getting this one from the library. It's called Lord Loss by Darren Shan, who also wrote the Cirque du Freak books.
Okay.
Did you ever read those?
No, but I saw them probably in my late teens, and
I
I
would
thought they
say-
sounded cool.
I would say they were more popular than these books, but I never read them. But there was that movie with John C. Reilly.
There was a movie?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
Oh, there was a Cirque du Freak movie, but they only made one. And it had John C. Reilly.
Should I be surprised?
No. So this is the first book in the Demonata series.
Ooh.
And my most distinct memory of this book is just the smell of the book when I cracked it open.
Nice.
I don't even know what it was. I don't think it was like a new book smell. It just, I don't know. I never got it from any other book.
Huh.
It was so weird, but that's like the most distinct thing that comes to my mind whenever I think about these books is I just get hit with that smell all over again.
I mean, book smell is pretty intense.
Yeah, but that's like the first thing that hits me whenever I think of these books.
Nice.
And then these books were so I don't remember the very beginning. I remember that the main character's name is Grubbs Grady.
Grubs.
Grubbs, yeah, with 2 B's.
Nice.
And basically he ends up coming home one day, and he comes home to just like a scene out of a Hellraiser. Basically, it is terrible. And I believe his family has just been, like, completely shredded by monsters.
Oh.
Like, I remember being a child and being like, whoa, this is a lot. Because I was young. I think I read these at the same time I started reading, maybe just before the Tamora Pierce book.
Oh,
so I was,
okay.
like, 7th, 8th grade. And I
So
was
like 12.
wow, that was something. And basically, here, I'll just read the back of the book here. Actually, it's just an excerpt from the book on the back of the book. That doesn't help at all.
Great. Wow, it's a very long series. I
This
just saw a
is-
list of them.
Yeah, the Saga of Darren Shan, that's the Cirque du Freak books. There's 12 of them.
Okay, the Demonata.
And this goes on for like another like 12 books as well. Like
Oh, wow.
they're both really big series. I think I read about half of them. Cuz what happens is like this book is about Grubbs, and then the next book is about another character in a different timeline. And then the next book is about another character in a different timeline.
Okay.
And it keeps going, and it keeps like alternating between these characters, and then they all come together, like all the timelines kind of line up.
Okay.
Like partway through the series. It was confusing as hell, and I could not keep track of everything happening.
Right.
And I stopped because I couldn't keep up with it all. And a character that I really liked died.
Oh.
And I was like,
And
okay,
the real
reason. So basically, this book like opens on him coming home from somewhere. Like page 28, he's coming home and everything is like all messed up. There's nobody home. Everything has been like destroyed. And he moves into the back room. And then the second chapter. This is the second chapter of the book. Just starts with blood everywhere. Nightmarish splashes and gory pools, wild streaks across the floor and walls. Except the walls aren't walls. I'm surrounded on all 4 sides by webs. Millions of strands thicker than my arms, some connecting in orderly designs, others running chaotically apart. Many of the strands are stained with blood. Behind the layers of webs, more layers. Banks of them, stretching as far back as the eye can see. Infinite. My eyes snap from the walls. I make quick mental thumbnails of the other details. Numb, functioning like a machine. The dripping sound. A body hanging upside down from the webby ceiling in the center of the room. No head. Blood drips onto the floor from the gaping red O of the neck. Even without the head, I recognize him. Dad, I scream, as the cry almost rips my vocal cords apart. To my left, an obscene creature spins around and snarls. It has the body of a very large dog. The head... Whoa, I went to the wrong page. It was weird. The head of a crocodile.
Oh.
Beneath it, motionless, my mum, or what's left of her. A dreadful howl to my right. Gret, sitting on the floor, staring at me, weaving sideways, her face white, except where it's smeared with blood. I start to call to her. She turns. I realize that she's been split in 2. Something's behind her, in the cavity at the back, moving her like a hand puppet.
Holy shit.
Like,
That's wild. Wow.
I could not believe it.
Wow.
At the time. It was intense.
Oof.
And then there's like this just... he's akin to like Pinhead from Hellraiser. That's like the scene that immediately comes to my mind.
Yeah, that's intense.
Is basically like a demon guy named Lord Loss, and he's I think Grubbs has to beat him at, like, a chess game or something, or else he will get killed. I don't remember the whole story.
Okay.
I just remembered that scene,
Wow.
and just, like, mortification at that whole thing. That was, like, the most vivid and terrifying thing I had ever read at the time.
Absolutely.
And this was a child's book. It was intense.
Yeah, like, a thing, like, just to note, I think that a lot of kids' books are way more intense, like, to an adult than they are to a kid.
Yeah.
Like, reading that, like, hearing that now and imagining, like, a little kid reading that, I'm like, holy crap, no way. But, I mean, when I was a kid, like I said, Year of Impossible Goodbyes, they describe, like, the torture that her brothers went through in, like, they were prisoners of war. They describe her grandfather getting his fingernails and toenails ripped off. Like, it's not, they don't go into great detail, but they do describe it, and that is straight up horror movie stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. I'm gonna keep reading these books. As an adult, I'm like, I can't believe I read those books. That's awful.
Yeah, it's interesting, just, I don't know, from the perspective of a reader now.
Yeah.
And also, too, like, what's actually acceptable, quote unquote, in, like, kids' literature.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about.
It's intense.
Yeah.
It's definitely intense.
Yeah. Like, do you remember what kind of, like, the overarching plot is? Like, are these kids trying to stop these demons from, I guess, murdering everything? Like,
I don't remember 100%. So he ends up going to live with his uncle.
Okay.
And he ends up making friends with this kid named Billy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, like, a whole... I don't know if it comes out in this book, but it might come... Like, they've all blended into one, because it was so long ago.
Yes.
But there's, like, a whole werewolf subplot where it turns out that Billy is, like, a werewolf. And Billy is also his brother, his half-brother, because his dad, like, slept around or something. I don't remember. And, I think they want to get... from, like, flipping through it, they want to get Lord Lost to cure Billy of his... lycanthropy or whatever.
Somehow.
And I think, like, they have to beat him at a chess game or something, and Grubbs is, like, a chess playing... Like, there's chess pieces on this cover. So
yeah.
makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it. It's something I think I would read again now as an adult.
Yeah.
Now that I can kind of... Because it got to be too much.
Yeah.
Like, a couple books in when there's, like... 3 different stories that haven't even touched each other going on, and the next book is a story that I didn't care about. I didn't bother continuing, and then the ones that I wanted to read weren't out yet, kind of thing. So
okay, yeah, I can see that. That's a very long series.
Yeah.
For kids, and I mean, I spent a lot of my childhood years reading The Babysitter's Club and Goosebumps, though.
Right.
So those were also very long series, but I think those were all more like one-shots.
Right.
Because, I mean, you could pick up any Babysitter's Club book, and, I mean, it's the same girls doing different stuff, and they very rarely reference back.
Yeah.
And same with Goosebumps, where they're all different kids, different stories, different towns, whatever, versus an actual series of books. Like, I don't think I read anything that was longer than 2 or 3 books.
So the Demonata ended up being 10 books long.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there was the Cirque du Freak, which was, like, 12 books or something. I think I read, like, the first 2 books in that series, and then I gave up on that, too. It got to be, like, too long.
Yeah.
But he's got a couple, like, longer sets. Like, he'd go big or go home, really, with Darren Shan.
Yeah, he's still kind of going, too, which is neat.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
something I'll check out for sure.
I'm interested now as an adult.
I remember, like, those graphic scenes like that keep popping back up.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just, like, a one pull them into the book and then continue kind of thing. Like, I vividly remember, I can't even tell you what book it was in, I just remember the scene about a kid getting, like, eaten alive.
Oh.
It was...
Wow.
Something.
Intense.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, there's something.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, I really like the cover. It is not a vampire. It is
a wolf, not a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
The werewolf plot would make sense as to why there's a wolf on the cover of this book.
Yes.
Though. I was like, why is there a wolf on this book? But that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming back to me.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And what else you got?
Oh, well, you can actually talk about this one too then, because you read it.
Yep.
I picked up Sabriel.
I always said Sabriel. I don't know
Sabriel.
if there's an actual way of saying it.
By Garth Nix, which I read. I think I read around the same time I read the Tamora Pierce books. Like, that's when I actually started reading.
You hit the ground running, too.
I did. I went full on. I had Tamora Pierce. I had Garth Nix. I had Darren Shan.
Yeah.
Like, that was... I picked them up, and then I just went. I remember...
I admit, I
her
don't
dad
remember...
goes missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember too much about the book. I remember necromancy.
Yes.
I remember a missing dad and a talking cat.
Yeah, Mog, I think was his name or something.
Moggy or
Mog-
Mogged or something.
Mog. The cat had the spirit of the bad guy inside of him.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he was a
Yeah.
demon cat.
Yeah.
I think, something like that.
Yeah, because he was wearing a little bell on his collar that kept him bound inside the body of the cat.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's really cool about Sabriel is that her dad is a necromancer, a Borson,
Abortion cat.
Aborson,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And he's a necromancer basically, and he has like all these bells of varying sizes that he wears like on a bandolier.
I remember loving that magic too.
Yeah.
The magic like where it's all bells.
Yeah. So like you call somebody back from the dead with a bell, or you ring a bell and you go into the zone between life and death kind of thing. I remember that. It's like a super foggy place with like water running at your feet kind of thing. I remember that vividly. And she's kind of like a necromancer in training.
Yes.
And then her dad goes missing. And she gets the bandolier with the bells on it one day. And she decides to cross over the wall, because she's on one side of the wall in like a, air quotes, normal civilization almost.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the wall, the further you get from the wall, the more magic there is.
Yes.
And so she crosses the wall and she goes off to find her father. And big adventure ensues.
Yes.
She has a cat companion who talks, who is a bad guy sealed into the body of a cat with a very tiny bell.
A mage boy who she frees from imprisonment somehow?
Yeah, she finds him in a cave, like he's a stone statue.
I remember that,
and
yes.
then he kind of wakes up, he comes to life or whatever. His name is Touchstone.
Touchstone.
Because when she touched him,
yes.
he turned from stone.
Okay.
And he has no memories. I remember this part vividly, because this was the most important part of the book.
Naturally.
So she and Touchstone go on an adventure and try to find her dad, and they end up fighting another big bad demon.
Yep.
And I remember the climactic battle at the end of the book was super cool. I remember
yes.
I remember... This book is old, so I'm not gonna...
Yeah, don't worry about spoilers. If you've read it, go read it.
It's good. It's worth it. It's a good YA book, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember
her being, like, surrounded by spirits and, like, ringing all the bells on her bandolier for some reason. Like,
There
I remember
was
there was a big scene there.
There was, yeah, the big scene was, something was happening and she had to ring the big bell.
Yeah.
And when you ring the big bell, like, everything dies or something. Yeah. Or she gets pulled into the death areas. I cannot remember for sure. But I remember that's where, like, the big kiss scene was.
Yeah. Was
where, like, don't pay attention to the bell, I'm gonna kiss her instead kind of scene. I remember that being crazy. I was like, yes, this is perfect.
Yes.
And then I remember the big fight at the end where you're not sure if everybody lived or who died and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember the big bad demon that they fight in that book also gets sealed into the body of a cat, and now she has two cats. One is white and one is black. And they both wear little tiny bells on their collars. I remember that.
Imagine just having, like, a legion of shitty demon cats.
So good.
Honestly, okay, I haven't read... There's other books in the series, I think 4 or 5 books.
There's at least 4 other ones, and then there's a series of novellas.
Okay, well, I haven't read any of those other books, and you have, but don't tell me if I'm right or not. But, like, if that actually happens, I'm going to be super happy. Super happy. She just keeps collecting cats of different colors and varying demons.
Yeah, Touchstone was a young charter mage imprisoned by magic, now free in the body, but still trapped by painful memories. He ends up being a prince.
Oh! Nice.
That's in the book.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he ends up being a prince, like, at the end of that book.
Okay.
It comes out, like, when he gets his memories back, he remembers.
I didn't remember that he remembered getting his... I didn't remember he remembered.
I remember he's a prince by the end of that book.
Okay.
He's a prince of the kingdom on the other side of the wall.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. And there's, like, some of the books... I think Lariel is another necromancer.
Okay.
But I think... like, some of the later books talk about their children or something.
Oh, cute. Okay.
Who, like, one of them grows up to also be a necromancer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I think necromancy is unused or underused, I should say, in fantasy. Like, I'm reading a book about necromancers right now.
Are you reading Gideon?
Yeah, I'm reading Gideon the Ninth, and,
I heard that one is not a romance novel.
No. Well... it has romance in it, but it is not a romance novel.
No, but people were showing it off like it was a romance novel for a while.
Oh.
In at least Twitter circles that I was in.
Oh, that's
and then somebody else was like, this is a good book, but it's not a romance novel, so.
Yeah. I'll let you know for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I don't think it's going to be a romance. I went into it expecting a sci-fi novel with romantic elements.
No, I would have gone into it expecting, like, a darker romance novel, because the way people were showing it off.
I really wish it was a darker romance novel. I think I love that.
The way people were showing it off, like, in the circles that I was involved in, it seemed like it was, like, a darker romance novel, but then somebody was like, no, it's not at all.
No.
So.
No.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm into necromancy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, in literary form, and not trying to raise the dead. So yeah, if anyone has any necromancy book recs, I'm about that.
The bell thing, is that like is that a thing, or is that just something that they made up for this book?
I want to say that it is pieced together from like other bits of mythology.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's an actual thing.
Because I always thought that was like super cool.
Yeah, me
but
too.
I was never like sure if it was like rooted in anything.
I don't know. Maybe inspired by. I think would be the best way of
Yeah.
describing that. But no, the bell magic is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I had almost forgotten about Sabriel as well. So, it's good. It's good we're talking about that. I don't know. I could probably talk for a long time about books I read in my childhood versus, I think, like, my favorite books. I really spent so much time reading. I liked so many books that it's really hard for me to pick out favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, also, too, I was a kid, and most of the memories of the books that I've read have been lost to time, where I can be like, yeah, absolutely, I read those books. I remembered loving them. They were great. What was about? I don't know. So, that's what, I guess, 25 plus memories, or years of memory.
I read
lapse.
Where the Red Fern Grows when I was a kid.
Oh.
I read it a lot.
Really?
Like, I read it over and over and over again.
That is not a book I would imagine you reading more than once.
No. As an adult, no. I had some questionable tastes as a youth.
Or at least very different.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. No, I remember reading that. I read that book before it was assigned reading for school.
Okay.
And I read it once, because it had a dog on the cover.
Yep.
And then I'm like, wow, I'm sobbing over this book. I'm gonna read this book again.
I feel
like multiple times.
I feel like baby Danny and I would have gotten along
And
from
then
a literary standpoint.
What was her name? I read all those books by Lurleen McDaniel.
That name sounds really
I've
familiar.
told you about her because it was just questionable choices all around.
What were they?
They were books about teenagers dying.
Oh, yes!
These books were kid gets cancer, kid meets another cancer kid, and then they fall in love, and then one of them dies, and then the other one is fine.
Oh, no.
And then there was, like, girl is sick and needs organs. She meets a boy who's also sick, and they fall in love, and then he dies in a motorcycle accident and gives her his organs.
Oh, my God.
Like, these books were intense, and I read so many of them. Sitting in the library reading these Lurleen McDaniel books.
I mean, it's very loving to give someone your organ.
I cannot believe I read all those books. Like, I read a lot of them.
I think for you and I to really jive on the book taste, you should rediscover.
Gotta get back into my Lurleen McDaniel.
Rediscover the part of your youth where you wanted to have your heart broken every time you read a book.
I don't know. I think it was... I honestly have no idea why I did that. I have no idea.
Me either. I mean, sometimes that kind of stuff can be... I don't know.
I wasn't reading them because I liked being sad. I think it was just like... I don't even know. Just the concept of death, I think, was like... I don't know. It intrigued me.
Yeah.
So I was reading these books.
I mean, like, when you're a kid, you work through stuff different ways.
I wasn't dealing with anything, though.
No, but I mean, like, you're learning about, like, death and also, like, that kind of level of, hey, this happens, people get sick and die. Like, honestly, I don't know why I read a book about people suffering in war probably 36 times during my whole elementary school life. Yeah, couldn't tell you. But some things just click with you for some reason. Also, Danny just pulled up a picture of the Cirque du Freak manga.
Apparently they adapted Cirque du Freak into a manga. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Those books are extremely popular. My partner read them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Wow. I'm sorry. I can't believe they did that. I cannot believe they did that.
It's okay. We're having our mind blown about kids' books today.
Oh.
But, yeah. So, all in all, I think intense reading experiences all around in our collective childhood.
Man, thinking about it now, I read some messed up stuff.
And that didn't influence your reading material now at all.
It went the exact opposite.
I mean, you have a bunch of Stephen King novels still.
Stephen King has never written anything like that graphic, though.
No, that's
just
true.
Like thinking back to that scene in Lord Lost, like this is my dad, his head's been cut off. Here's my mom, she's been mangled by a crocodile dog. My sister has been split in half, and something is using her body like a talking puppet. Like, that's intense.
Yeah.
And I've read a couple Stephen King books, and nothing has been like that.
That's true. He kind of does more like the mental kind of weird, creepy horror.
It's more subtle.
Yes.
Than that, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess kids have a higher tolerance for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're old and too... I don't know. What is it? Empathy? Is it empathic? I don't know.
We've lived through too much.
Yeah. Can't deal now. Too many feelings.
Yeah.
Not young enough.
Cool.
But, yeah. Good times.
Yeah. So I think we're about 40 minutes. That's about...
Yeah, I think we're good.
Unless you have any other things to mention, but...
Nothing off the top of my head, aside from I'm still looking for any books with a protagonist named Arlene.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Don't disappoint me. I need this. I need this real bad. In my spare time, I've been, like, devoting time to, like, searching. It's hard, man.
Yeah.
You can't search books by main character name.
Yeah, no, not really.
It's a flaw of the internet.
All right.
So where can they find us, Danny?
We are on Facebook, Literary AF. You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, at Literary AF. Our Gmail is literaryafpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, LiteraryAFPod. My Twitter is Danny_reads.
And mine is CatFaceGargoyle.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So
I think we're getting close to holiday time. Are we gonna have an episode over Christmas?
I think Sheldon and I are gonna do something.
Okay.
We're gonna work something out, so...
Well, look forward to a possible holiday episode.
Yeah, something like that. We'll figure it out.
Cool.
Just about some fun.
Nice.
Alright,
Alright,
cool.
Bye!
Bye!